This episode is brought to you by 5280 Magazine. The annual 5280 brunch event is back on March 29th at Asterisk in Rhino. Enjoy a memorable Saturday afternoon jam-packed with the best of Denver brunch. Think sweet and savory menus from editor-picked brunch restaurants, a build-your-own Bloody Mary station, tasty beverages including zero-proof options, a dynamic DJ set from Mr. Groove, and so much more. A special discount is available when you purchase 4 or more tickets. Simply choose general admission at checkout and use the discount code BRUNCHCREW. Get your tickets now at 5280.com. That's 5280.com. Today on CityCast Denver, the King Soopers strike is over, but negotiations continue. So did either side really win this fight? Then struggling downtown restaurant owners are now blaming the mayor for everything from crime and homelessness to labor costs and bike lanes. Producer Paul Caroli and I dig into the details and more news of the week. Today is Wednesday, February 19th. I'm Bree Davies, and here's what Denver's talking about. Hey, Paul.
Hey, good morning, Bree.
Good morning. So, 2.5 weeks. We have 2.5 weeks until what?
Until Hay Day.
Our big event, our first big event. And we want to see you guys there. We're super excited. There's so much that's going to be happening in this cool space called Asterisk, and we want you to be there.
And honestly, this response that we've been getting so far has been overwhelming, especially in the last few days. The tickets have just been flying.
I know.
We get these notifications on Slack every time there's a sale, which I love. I mean, what a great feeling that is.
It is
to see
a
all
little
these people
dopamine
just
hit.
like, oh, it's amazing. And they're going like crazy. Last few days especially. So, they will run out at some point, and don't miss your chance to get yours. If you haven't heard us talk about it, it's an indoor fair with a distinctly Denver twist. Family-friendly activities all day, March 8th. It's going to be a ton of fun.
Yeah, we're going to have a grandstand stage. I'll be up there with our friend of the show, Joshua Emerson, emceeing all these awesome acts that we have coming through on the stage. We've got Ballet Folklorico, we've got Theater Artibus, we've got a live art demonstration. We've got all different kinds of things. So you have to come out and check it out. It's March 8th from 10 a.m. to 6 p.m. It's all ages. Like I say, babies to grandmas. Everybody's invited, and we'd love to see you there. So
get your tickets now at heydaydenver.com. Get them fast.
Do it.
We want that dopamine hit.
I know we truly get a little notification every time. My husband was like, "How do you know how many tickets are being sold?" I was like, "I literally have a separate Slack channel that tells me every time." And it truly is. I'm not going to lie. It is nice. It's nice to see. Yeah. So, well, I mean, we got stuff to talk about.
The news. Let's talk about the news.
Let's do it.
The big news, I think, hit late Monday night.
Yes.
The big King Soopers strike is over. Apparently, there's some kind of agreement between the company, King Soopers, and the union, the UFCW Local 7, and these 10,000 workers are going back to work.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, by the time you are hearing this, the picket line should be down. And King says normal store hours will resume by Thursday. They had cut down their hours because obviously they were low on staff. But CPR reported that they've reached a tentative return to work agreement that includes a 100-day labor peace agreement, giving both sides until April to negotiate a new contract. So
no new contract.
No new contract. This is an agreement to negotiate, essentially, while letting folks go back to work and letting customers, that was kind of the conversation around this, was like, we understand how hard this is on our employees. We understand how hard this is on our customers. Both sides were saying this. So this is sort of an agreement to get back to the bargaining table.
Yeah. I mean, there's a lot of spin flying on both sides of this thing.
You want to look the best, right? You want to look like you're doing the best and being the best. And it's complicated, but it's also a negotiation. So everybody's holding their cards, like at the end of the day.
Well, what do you think was really going on then? Why do you think they're going back to work?
Well, the thing that struck me was that there were concerns on both sides about employees losing health care for the month because they're required to work 80 hours over a 4-week period to retain those benefits. And some folks would not be hitting that 80-hour mark this month, and then they'd be losing their health insurance. And I don't know about you, but as an employee that values my benefits and, regular stuff I have to do at the doctor, I could see why that was maybe a factor for both sides.
Oh, for sure. I'd be crapping my pants if I was a worker. I actually spent some time out on the picket lines yesterday. I'm currently living, and if anyone has been following my journey through this luxury home renovation / mold removal, my wife and I have been living in a series of Airbnbs around the city. We're currently at this place behind Union Station. So I was on the picket lines of the new King Soopers, relatively new King Soopers on Chestnut.
Mm-hmm.
And I talked to the strike captain a little bit. Her name is Dre, and she told me that she has 4 kids and that the healthcare is a huge concern for her.
Yeah.
She had a sense that the strike was coming, so she made sure to work enough hours in February that she would be okay. I guess based on that calculation that you were just talking about.
Yeah.
But she said that for her, it's been a big deal, and she's worried about a strike going on very long. And then also for a lot of the people that she worked with who weren't able to get the hours, it's been a big subject of conversation on the line.
So I know there was another thing you wanted to bring up.
I watched a video that Kim Cordova, the head of the union, posted on Friday.
Mm-hmm.
She's been sharing these updates to workers regularly throughout the strike. And she said that she had a couple of ultimatums that she was saying, like, I must have these things before we return to negotiations.
Oh.
Because they go back and forth all the time. You see this in the press a little bit, the barbs that they're trading, but the actual behind the scenes talks are just we're going on constantly. And she said that one of the issues was this healthcare issue, but the other thing was staffing data. They needed data. They wanted data from the company on sales data, so they could better assess the understaffing question as they in the terms of the negotiations. And she said that was one of their 2 big unfair labor practices complaints. And if they didn't get that data, they wouldn't return to talks. Now, if you'll notice in the reporting about the agreement on Monday, there is no agreement on data. I don't think the union got that data that she said she needed to have before returning to talks.
Interesting. I did find that part of when I was having those conversations with both Kim Cordova and Joe Kelly, the president of King Soopers, what he was saying was just not connecting with the experience I was having in the store. He said that they are well staffed, and I don't see that. So I do find it interesting, but I see what you're saying that okay, so that was a sticking point, but now it's not?
Yeah. I think that the union, I mean, we should, I have a clip I want to share from another worker that I talked to actually, and then we can talk about this, but this person, this gets to one of the theories I had around this, the end of the strike. This is a clip from a gentleman named Zoe Duarte, who has worked at the King's on Chestnut for 1.5 years, and he's been a King's employee for 4 years. So I'll just set it up a little bit. I'll say Zoe and I were talking about the difference between this strike and the last strike. The last strike 3 years ago, when the union declared victory, basically with a lot of compromises from the company, and I asked him what he was noticing that was different this time around. But the strike itself, have you noticed? What would you say? How would you characterize the differences between last strike and this strike?
He's played a more hardball, and they're trying to take more from the last time than this time.
You mean Joe Kelly?
Yeah. Joe Kelly's taking more, and then a lot of people are not supporting us that well. As you see, they go into King Soopers, and it's different this time.
You think you're not getting the same support?
Nah, not last time. Last time is better.
I got to be honest. I was going to tell you that's what I've noticed as well.
Yeah. Last time it was way better. This time they just don't care. Nobody cares, and everybody's living their own lives, and they go shopping. And I have a lot of customers I see all the time going in. It's just okay.
You're looking at people that recognize you.
Yeah. Oh yeah. That were my friends. They still are, but
Are they?
It's just come on, man. I've been going to other stores, Safeway, and Walmart, and supporting my people.
So how does that feel, seeing people walk past you out here on the line?
The first 2 times, a Super Bowl Sunday, that hit me hard. It made me feel sad to see everybody just come in and not give a hoot. They're too worried about the game and whatever, and not worried about what we're doing out here for, because, that would have helped us a lot if they wouldn't have came and shopped, you know what I mean? But they did, as well. It's just wow, I couldn't believe that. I got pretty depressed and had to go in the back and just cool off because I got mad. I was upset, because I couldn't believe how people were. And then they're cussing at us, saying we're lazy and this and that, go back to work. And Yeah, I didn't hurt at all.
You had people cussing at you?
Oh yeah.
What were they saying?
Just go back to work, you F, and this and that. I don't want to say it, but yeah, it's pretty bad.
I honestly, I have not been in a King Super since this started. I have driven by many of them and seen the striking workers, but I didn't realize that they felt that, or they were seeing more folks crossing the picket line. And I just can't imagine talking to somebody like that. But I also have a deep love and respect for folks that work in retail. So, wow.
Yeah, but think about the 3 years that have passed between these two strikes. I mean, I remember 3 years ago, we covered that strike. It felt like the whole city was on the picket lines. Like, it was electric. That's what I remember. Like, people were engaged. People were following the day-to-day negotiations back and forth. This time, look at what else is going on. We got a new president in office that's trying to, reshape the federal government. Everybody I know is talking about protests and inflation and unemployment. I just saw new numbers. Unemployment's going up. Axios Denver had that this morning. Rent is high. There's just so much else going on. And people are already sick of paying high prices. The difference between what King's offers and what the competition offers is, I guess, I think that was big enough this time, and people are kind of worried about themselves a little bit more. That was my take on this, because I've been seeing full parking lots at King's for 2 weeks now. I hadn't noticed a lot of solidarity personally.
I don't know. I have a lot of thoughts about that, but they're not appropriate for to say on air. But
I mean, you're a great friend of labor. That's something people know you as.
Yeah, people know this about me. That's frankly despicable to talk to people that way who serve you every day.
100%.
I have to say, so I did my usual grocery shopping, and I went to 3 different stores, one of them twice, to get all the things that I usually get at King Soopers. So as much as it was an inconvenience for me, it was also a reminder of why that's the store that I prefer to shop at. It has all the things that I need. And I thought that whole time, as much as I was frustrated that I spent half a day grocery shopping instead of an hour and a half grocery shopping, I remembered why this was happening and what folks were asking for. And again, I mean, I think, I don't know, these are folks that worked through the pandemic. These were folks, I work from home. I have these luxuries, and these folks help me provide for my family every day. So,
yeah, but it's a numbers game, there's a lot of people out there hurting, and when you're going out on strike, you're hoping for leverage. If you're the union, you want the leverage to have a better negotiating position. And I think the story from this agreement to return to work without a contract, I think this is a loss for the union.
I'm just sorry that someone was rude to that guy. This episode is brought to you by CU Denver's Center for New Directions, offering a master's degree and certificates in public and community leadership. As a CityCast Denver listener, you're already passionate about your city. Why not advance your passions and career with courses on local government policy or nonprofit management? CU Denver is Colorado's leading urban university, and New Directions is teaching what Denver's talking about right now: local politics, affordable housing, labor unions, and more. Dude, you can take a course in community organizing? That's amazing. New Directions offers weekend intensive courses from practitioners doing the kind of work we talk about right here on CityCast Denver. New student scholarships are open for summer or fall starts, or apply by March 17th for a paid Colorado Department of Local Affairs Best and Brightest Fellowship to earn a living and experience in a small or rural town alongside your master's degree. Click on the link in the show notes to get started meeting your moment today.
What sort of promises have you made to yourself this year? Maybe get in better shape or eat healthier, save more money, travel somewhere new. What about discovering a new culture by learning a new language? With Babbel, you can do that in just a few weeks. I'm CityCast CEO David Plotz, and I'm having such a good time learning Spanish on Babbel this year. I'm taking a trip to Mexico City in the spring, and Babbel is giving me the Spanish foundation that's going to make my trip so much better. Babbel's quick 10-minute lessons, handcrafted by more than 200 language experts, get you to begin speaking your new language in 3 weeks or at whatever pace you choose. And because conversing is the key to really understanding each other in a new language, Babbel is designed using practical, real-world conversations. And one way they do that is with their own podcasts. I'm a podcast listener. I'm guessing since you're listening to this podcast, you are too. And I have been getting ready for my Mexico City trip by listening to Babbel's conversational podcasts. There's a short conversation you listen to, then an instructor talks you through what happened, and then you listen again, and then you catch everything when you listen that second time. There's also a great read-along transcript, too, which I love. The one I did today was with Maria and Carmela trying to make dinner plans, but Carmela is so busy. She's way too busy with work and yoga, but finally they agreed on brunch on Saturday. Studies from Yale, Michigan State, and other universities continue to prove that Babbel works. One study found that using Babbel for 15 hours is equivalent to a full semester at college. So let's get more of you talking in a new language. Babbel is gifting CityCast listeners 60% off subscriptions at babbel.com/CityCast. Get up to 60% off at babbel.com/CityCast. Spelled BABBEL.com/CityCast. Babbel.com/CityCast. Rules and restrictions may apply.
Okay, our next story takes us back downtown. Poor downtown. Man,
Yeah.
I don't know if there's a week that goes by where we don't have a story about downtown.
It's one of my favorite things to talk about. I love downtown. Downtown's in crisis. Downtown is dying. Downtown's a toilet. Downtown's beautiful. It's everything.
Yeah. So, I mean, I think we're in the downtown's in crisis part of this conversation because a couple of restaurant owners downtown sent a letter to the mayor last week. What were their complaints, Paul?
So this was in the Denver Gazette, and it actually got picked up by a former gubernatorial candidate for the Republican Party, Heidi Ganahl's new conservative website that I peruse from time to time to keep tabs on what the right-wing folks are talking about here in Colorado. She picked this up. Not a lot of other people picked this up, but it's part of a narrative that we've been following. We've been having these conversations on the show. Restaurants dying. So the letter was authored by a gentleman named Dave Query, who is the owner of Jack's Fish House and Oyster Bar, but also signed on were the owners of Illegal Pete's, which is interesting. Cholon Restaurants, which is Lon Cementsma's group. He's sort of a mainstay of the Denver restaurant scene, probably like 15, 20 years. And Dave wrote to the mayor, "You ran your entire campaign platform on restoring our downtown Denver business districts," which I don't know if you did. "It has gotten worse since you took the position of mayor, even though you have received $550 million towards stewarding it in a different direction." So Dave and his fellows called out some other specifics. They complained about bike lanes being installed and removing parking spaces over the last couple of years. He talked about homelessness. He talked about crime and called out those specific stabbings a few weeks ago, which, again, seemed to have been a real turning point for a lot of people when they think about downtown.
Yeah.
In the perception of crime, even though we know that the actual data is showing that these incidents are declining. And then, of course, everyone's favorite topic, we've been talking about it a lot, labor costs for restaurants. This whole minimum wage issue. Minimum wage has been going up every year for the last few years, and these restaurant owners are upset about it. They are upset about labor costs.
I have to say, this felt like a real grab bag of reasons why the mayor is bad. Bike lanes are bad, food trucks are bad, crime is bad, homelessness is bad, drug use is bad, labor costs are bad, minimum wage is difficult. It felt a little bit all over the place to me. But what I do find interesting is the campaign, when he's talked about the campaign being all about downtown.
Yeah, I mean, it's definitely been a priority of his for sure. They bought the old Denver Post building. They've had a bunch of new projects. The yellow vest that we've talked about. The $550 million is kind of an interesting one. That claim that even though you have received $550 million, I think what Dave is referring to there is the expansion of the Downtown Development Authority that voters downtown approved last November.
Okay.
So that money hasn't. It's not like that money is exists now. That's a tax authority. It will exist.
Over time.
That development authority is not set up yet. They're working on it right now because it literally was just approved. The first grants are set to go out like later this winter and spring. I know the mayor because we've talked to them, and we've talked to the downtown development, we've talked to the downtown Denver partnership folks. They're really aiming for like April, May, when the 16th Street Mall is ready to reopen, like a big grand reopening party where these grants are going to start getting distributed. There's a bunch of new businesses that are set to reopen. I know that's what they're thinking about when they're thinking about downtown right now.
I'm glad you clarified that $550 million because I was confused, to be honest with you. I was like, I don't know where that number came from. But you're right in that, like,
it's confusing.
It's a long-term thing, and it just was voted on. Like, he can't wave a magic wand and have that money appear out of nowhere. I am a little skeptical of this, like, spring reopening when everything on the 16th Street Mall is finally open, because honestly, we're down there every week, and it does kind of suck, at least for, like, options. There's just not a lot of restaurants that, I don't know. I'm skeptical, but I don't know. I see this as also, he couldn't fix things overnight, but he's definitely the reason, or he's definitely the person that we look to when there's a struggle. I understand why these complaints are being pointed at the mayor, but it is interesting.
For sure. I mean, he's the leader of the city
Right.
in more ways than one. I mean, he's the boss of the bureaucracy, but he's the moral authority. You want him to, like, set the tone for the city. And I think that's what a lot of people are feeling right now, because the downtown issue is so much about perception and people not wanting to go downtown, not seeing the value for them, not like feeling the excitement to be down in the big city and do the big city stuff. Like, you want the mayor to help people see that. And that's something that he can do that doesn't cost money, or he doesn't have to spend money to do that. He just has to, like, show people how to do it.
But what did the mayor's office say? Because I know the mayor's office responded.
Yeah, the mayor's office did respond to the Gazette, and I actually also checked in with them about the tipped minimum wage issue, which I'm particularly keen on. But they talked about all the things the mayor has been doing, which are many, many things. They talked about increasing police patrols since the stabbing spree. They talked about this downtown development authority situation, and then they also talked about the work on homelessness that has been, enormous. It's been a huge project of the whole city, and by many regards has been quite successful, at least visually. If you walk around downtown, you can see, as they will tell you, that basically all of the large tent encampments have been removed downtown. There are no large tent encampments. And they don't allow them to be rebuilt where they've been cleared. That's part of how the mayor is operating on this issue.
Yeah. Yeah. And again, I mean, the homelessness thing was one of those things that I think folks just want an immediate solution for. And the reality is that's just not, you can't just house people. But I agree with you in that visually, at least, folks should feel like it is changed.
I mean, we'll see when the point in time data comes back for this year.
Yeah.
Last 2 years, homelessness has gone up despite his efforts, which have been enormous. And he has definitely helped a lot of people. But yeah, overall, it's just a tough issue. I mean, it's a chronic problem. It's a capitalism problem, in my opinion.
Yeah, it's a very complicated problem that's not going to be
Can we talk about the
solved.
tip minimum wage thing?
Yeah, I was going to ask you about that because that was brought up in this story, was the tip to minimum wage issue, because it's at the legislature right now, and it's something that we've been talking about quite a bit on the show.
We broke the story.
Yeah, what does that have to do with this conversation?
Well, this is the whole restaurants are in crisis situation. When restaurateurs talk about the crisis in this city, they most often talk about labor costs. And that for them is this issue of the tipped minimum wage we've been talking about. The fact that, they have to pay tipped workers so much, and that the percentage of how much they have to pay tipped workers has gone up disproportionately for what they have to pay other workers, and blah, 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 blah. So this is interesting because, yeah, like you said, it's going to the legislature. It's now a bill. They're actually having a hearing later this week. So I wanted to know what the mayor thinks, because this isn't just a state issue. Like, the bill can change the state law, but then locally we would have to change the local law. And the spokesperson for the mayor referred me back to a statement that he made after the governor first flagged this issue in his State of the State speech in January. So the mayor's comment was, I'm especially glad to see Governor Polis prioritize support for our vibrant restaurant industry. While raising the minimum wage has created new opportunity for workers, the unintended consequences of steep wage disparities between tipped workers and back-of-house workers and skyrocketing costs for businesses are simply unsustainable. I look forward to working with Governor Polis and the General Assembly to tackle this affordability crisis and identify equitable and fair solutions to provide even greater support to local Denver restaurants and their staff. Interesting comment, but not actually a position on the issue.
I was like, there's
He's
a lot
not actually supporting or opposing the proposal to lower the tipped minimum wage. So we're going to sit down with him next week is the plan.
Let's ask
Hopefully
him.
we get to talk about this because I really want him to I want to hear what he thinks.
Yeah. No, definitely. If you have questions for the mayor too, let us know. 720
Please do. Now is the time.
720-500-5418. Give us a call on the Questions for Mayor Mike hotline. We would love to hear from you because we've got a litany of questions. Something I thought also about this story was that this narrative around restaurant closures. Like the Denver Gazette reported that 425 restaurants in Denver have closed since 2022. And as a Denverite, it feels like we're losing restaurants left and right. What is that's the reality in some sense, but is there something deeper here?
Well, I mean, that's one way to talk about the reality. I think this issue is like really interesting. Everyone in the industry you talk to about this will say the data is notoriously unreliable. Like, and it's actually like, I don't know why. I mean, there's a lot of different ways to track restaurant openings and closings. You read Westward every week. You see lists. I know some people are out there like keeping tallies based on that Westward report every week. But after the last time we covered this on our show, my guy at the Excise and License Department, which tracks restaurant licensing, his name is Eric. He's the source of one data set on this that's pretty reliable, at least the one that's been going around most often, which was cited in the Denver Post a few weeks ago. They had this story that was like, there's a 22% reduction in restaurant licenses since 2021. So like more than 1 in 5 restaurants is closed. We talked about that actually on the show recently. So Eric reached out because he said, basically that whole narrative that has grown out around that Denver Post article is quote, baloney. If you see anything that says restaurants are collapsing right now, that's just simply untrue, according to Eric. And the reason why, he said, is because the restaurant licensing data was overhauled in 2023. They completely changed the way that they track restaurant licenses and the way that they do licensing for restaurants. So anything pre-2023 and post-2023 have different systems, different ways of accounting for these things. So then based on that, he then shared some new data with me that wasn't in the Post a few weeks ago from the last 6 months. And he says, basically, in the last 6 months, restaurant openings and closings are flat.
Huh.
And then specifically, he pointed out in January of this year, which is when you would expect many restaurants to close because that's when the new minimum wage increase went into effect.
Well, and leases and all kinds of things,
18 licenses expired this January. Last year, 36 licenses expired in January.
So it's technically
January
down.
to January, that would be down. Now he says overall the trend line is flat. And he would also point to all these other factors since 2021, like inflation, the pandemic, et cetera. It just seems like if you go to the root of this situation, this whole narrative about restaurant closing crisis, it's a lot more complicated. And maybe we shouldn't just let the restaurant owners dictate how this is perceived.
Yes. And I agree. I don't think that they should be the sole source of that information. But also, anecdotally, it's really hard to not feel that way when you see restaurants you love closing all the time.
Oh, for sure. I mean, it's tragic. You see your favorite spot close. It's like, this is a disaster.
Yeah, it feels very personal. And I think that's part of the reason that these narratives really hang on is because we have a lot of feelings about the restaurants that we go to and how they connect us to the city and and it's food. It's all about feelings. So that's interesting.
Okay, so this is a comment from our subreddit, the CityCast Denver subreddit, about this past Friday's show, where you and Justine Sandoval and Adrian Gonzalez, our newsletter editor, discussed the possibility that First Friday might not get its license renewal on Santa Fe.
Yeah.
So it's a comment from user Atman, Atmahn, longtime commenter. Atman writes, This Santa Fe debate, as well as the recent decisions like Larimer opening up to cars, rolling back bike lanes, etc., has been really telling of the city's actual priorities. The city spends a bunch of money to produce these plans and goals, and these recent decisions go directly against basically all of them. Safety / Vision Zero, promoting local businesses, fostering community, promoting culture and art, environmental, etc., etc., etc. In the name of convenience for vehicles. Why do they even produce these plans and goals if they're not going to even attempt to achieve them? It's been frustrating watching this unfold as a resident and primarily pedestrian of the city.
Well, I appreciate that. I did bring that exact issue up in the episode, was the messaging from the city feels to, I think, a lot of us that it is not interested in pedestrian-friendly infrastructure in general. I think, and I don't know. I mean, I guess the city would probably disagree, right? But we've looked at, they mentioned it. The 29th and Larimer conversation was huge. Paul, you were down there talking to folks about it. They were mad. The Viva Streets was such a disappointment that they canceled it because it was so fun. So
yeah, some people were mad. I mean, in both of those cases, though, there was a minority of business owners that were like, heck yeah, cancel this. This is bad for my business.
Yeah, and I have to say I have an insider on the Santa Fe situation who used to work down there in a very official capacity. And she told me that the business owners are often some of the hardest people to deal with when it comes down to doing things like making more pedestrian access.
Really?
Yes.
Tell me about that.
Yeah. She said that she worked with the city for years on expanding sidewalks, and some business owners lost their mind. And so these pilot programs where they had expanded the sidewalks never got put into place because several business owners didn't like it. And a lot of it has to do with, I think Santa Fe too, is the parking, right? Is when they did expand these pedestrian spaces, it got rid of some of the parking directly on Santa Fe. And so the rest of the time, business owners were saying, well, it's not accessible enough to my car driving customers. And another point that she made is the Santa Fe, this event is basically operated by two heavily volunteer run organizations, the BID and the Art District. And this is a lot of volunteer time. She was saying Andrea Barella, who was interviewed in the Denver 8 story, who runs the BID, she does a lot of volunteer work to make that thing happen. And so her argument was, if the city actually helped invest a little bit more in this event, it would be successful in so many ways, but they don't feel like they get enough, or at least when her time there, she didn't feel like the city supported them enough in doing it.
I think that's key. That's something that I talked to Amy Ford about the 2900 Larimer car-free block, why that went away. And she was like, well, basically, there were these business owners, and it seemed like the community was divided, so we didn't want to support them. But she had also told me that the city has supported other projects to maintain car-free streets. Like the city paid for those bollards at Larimer Square that are part of that new car-free block. And the city's also doing the same for the project to shut down Glenarm at the pavilions to cars. They're supporting that actively. So I think the city, when they do have that, when they do think, or they're ready to recognize that there is community support, they're ready to support it. They definitely do talk the talk when it comes to pedestrian friendly streets.
Yeah, it's
just that they maybe don't always want to overrule a minority, strong minority voices of business owners because of the stuff we were talking about earlier. Business owners are talking about how hard it is to do business right now in Denver. It's part of that same narrative, I think they really want Denver to be open for business.
Yeah. Also, I just think that an event like this, shut down the Santa Fe First Friday when they do this big event, it's so massive, and it is part of what makes Denver. It's one of those cultural events that people identify with what makes Denver so cool. And that's where I get frustrated. Is like, we have to balance that aspect of it too. It's hard to put a monetary value on culture, but I mean, it's one of the oldest neighborhoods in the city. It's beautiful that happens, but it takes a lot of work to do it. And I think that's the big part of this. Well, you can always let us know what you're thinking about any episode or anything we've talked about on the always open CityCast Denver hotline, 720-500-5418, or email us, denver@citycast.fm. We always love to hear from you. Paul, nice to be back. See you later.
See you next time.
That's all for today here on CityCast Denver. If you enjoyed this show, why not take a minute to tell Dave Query about us? Rate the show wherever you get your podcasts, and subscribe to our morning newsletter and learn more about us at denver.citycast.fm. And if you love the show, come see us in person at Heyday, an indoor fair with a distinctly Denver twist on Saturday, March 8th. Get your tickets now at heydaydenver.com. We'll be back tomorrow morning with more news from around the city. See ya.
Yes, it is nice to be back. I hope my voice will return soon.